Great Convos Season 5 is here, and we're coming in strong.
Hello, everyone. Happy Monday to you. Congratulations on showing up again this Monday afternoon. I'm Roger Caesar, and welcome to Great Convos, where we always say, whether you agree or disagree, you can always find great convos. Today, I am, well, you just took off the names. Where are you?
Here's the big reveal.
I am the big stage guy, and my partner over there.
Hello, I'm Alexandre, Matt, the camera ready guy. It's true that you are a big guy, whether on stage or online. So, big stage guy, why that title?
Well, let's just first of all welcome our loyal listeners who are joining us today. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we always appreciate you. Put your comments in the chat so we can know where you are and who you are. Thank you very much. Hello, Kathy. How are you? Man, today we've touched on this a couple times before, and this is for our speakers. And we wanted to talk more about the differences on going online versus being in person. What are some of the things that you have to look out for? The mistakes that oftentimes speakers make in transitioning from one to the other, and some of the pitfalls that happen.
Yeah, like we talked already earlier about this, and we could go on for the full day. So we'll try to keep it tight. This is one thing that we must do, especially when we're online, not go too much into details. But let's talk about why this is such a big topic, Roger. Let's talk about 2020, when something happened at that time.
Yeah, well, as everyone knows, that was the start of the pandemic. And of course, as Toastmasters, we had a huge decision to make, both from the actual international level and as well down to the districts, on whether or not to continue that year. Now, some clubs, and I'm sorry, not some clubs, some districts decided, hey, let's go ahead and try this, try it out, see what we can do. Now, unfortunately, our district at the time felt that they didn't want to do it. And so we missed out on an opportunity to compete in 2020. And it was one of those things for me. I was very much positively wanting them to try it. I wanted them to go ahead with it. Do you remember that whole thing, Alex? I mean, that was just crazy how everybody just went into a mode, right? And said, oh, there's no way we can now go from being in person to online, right?
It can't be done. and so, well, some districts, I will do a shout out to District 61, who said, all right, let's do it. They rose to the occasion and said, what can we do, instead of, oh, this is going to be too difficult. So I can understand why we would say, oh, it's a risk, it's too difficult, let's not do it. But man, for you and me that year, we missed out on something great.
Yeah,
because then we saw.
Well, I was going to say, for me, even shout out to District 60, because they as well decided to continue onward and try it as well. But I was a division director that year, and my contest happened on March the 10th, and then a short days later is when they shut everything down. So our division champion never got an opportunity that year. So this is what it was for me. It was like, oh my God, we were really hoping for the best for all of our contestants, and they didn't get that opportunity.
Hey, Roger, I was the division representative. I was going to district. But then later on, it continued all online only. And at the World Championship of Public Speaking in 2020, this is when we saw the first world final for the international speech contest, all online. It was eye-opening and revelatory in the different styles that we saw. And I got to tell you, Roger, there's one contestant, Maureen Zapala, who I thought had well, I might have been biased. I knew her personally. I thought, man, she's going to place this. She might be the world champion. It's going to be really good. She had everything needed. to win the world championship. The only problem was there was no audience.
Of course.
Now,
And
I don't know if you remember.
that is different, right? That's
Exactly.
a big
So
difference.
so what was the difference between Maureen and the guy who eventually became the champion, Mike Carr? Maureen delivered and presented as if there was an audience. We could see her from her head to her feet.
Mhm.
It would have been wonderful on a real stage with real live people, but there was just something missing to have to be able to be on top like Mike Carr did.
Right.
What was the difference between both?
Yeah, definitely with Mike Carr, and I call him the godfather of online contests in terms of Toastmasters because he was an innovator. And let's not pull back on that at all. He was truly an innovator when it came to how he performed his speech. And if you have not seen his speech, please go back and look at it. Mike Carr, 2020 world champion of public speaking. Uh, the whole idea of him starting in the corner like this, right? We thought this was unheard of. We at this time just believed that we had to stay right here, stationary, and just stay within this box, right? We didn't want to move too far to the left, too far to the right, but most people decided to start this way when they were competing in that year.
I remember seeing you at the beginning of even after that world championship. Oh man, you were bad online. You had some difficulty going from one to the other. But we gotta.
I recall that. I remember you and I having this conversation many times. How when I came back and I started competing in 2021. By the way, 2021, for anybody who doesn't or did not know, was the only year in Toastmasters International where the entire competition from the club level all the way to the World Championship of Public Speaking was strictly online. And that's what we had to face in that year. Alex, you competed that year, but you and I have had the joke where you saw me the first time when I did it at the club level and you said, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have this at all. He's all the way back here. He looks stiff, doesn't know what he's doing. But I quickly learned when we got to the district level how to fully use this camera. And I give a lot of props to Mike Carr because I studied a lot of what he did in his speech.
So let's discuss about that because now, thank you, Kathy, for that comment. Kathy, who says both of you mastered speaking online. Well, here's the thing. After mastering speaking online, sometime in 2023, I was invited in person to present, and I presented my speech that I had presented only online. And I thought, I've done things in person before. I know what to do. I know how to use the stage. And then I went there and I presented, and it was so strange seeing the faces again.
Right.
It had been years. I'm trying to do dialogue in my own speech, and I'm seeing people instead, and I don't know where do I need to look? Where do I need to stand? I'm so confused. So I realized I should have rehearsed and planned how to present in person because I had presented it dozens of times online. So it's really, Roger, would you say this? It's like it's two different speeches.
Oh,
Not
most
only
definitely.
in how you deliver, but there might be some things else that is different from online and on site.
Right. And it truly is a completely different entity from one to the other. And I'd even ask our listeners online if what were their experiences from going from in person to online to back to in person again, if you had been around long enough for that, or if you were just through the online and now in person. What were your experiences? How did you feel? But I'll tell you this, Alex. We did talk about this in the back room beforehand. The reality is, for me, my speech that I did in 2021 on the world stage, Is It In You? That speech was created back in 2017. So, I had that speech in my pocket for 4 years before I actually delivered it. But I had delivered it at a TLI training in person in 2017. And the laughter was humongous
Yeah.
with some of the parts that were in my speech. And to try to turn it into an online type of speech, I realized one of the things I had to do more was embellish a little more so that I would get the laughter. I thought that that was one of the keys in my speech, that I had to embellish the reaction between me and my sister in that first part of my speech. I had to embellish the looks on my face coming in using the camera. Those were parts of the things that I had to learn to change. Whereas on stage at that time, there in front of me, I could look at somebody and have a gesture like what? And they understood it right away. But the embellishment comes from using this camera effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, and using the camera is one of the big things about presenting online. We say it almost every time when when someone is presenting online and they don't quite have it. One thing is to look at the camera instead of looking at the at the at your screen, at the people, if you want
Mhm.
to stimulate eye contact. By the way, if you want to have more tips on how to reach your audience online, there's an episode in season 3 on March 18. Not sure of the number of the episode, but March 18 episode, we discuss about online speaking to reach your audience. You can go back to that. What, Roger, what is the what are the similarities, or what goes well from online to on-site, or vice versa? What does
That's a
not
good
show?
question. That's a good question. I think, well, first of all, the story is still the same. And so a big part of what you do is still create that speech, the stories that come with that speech, that you feel that no matter if someone is sitting on the opposite side of the camera watching you versus being online, I mean, being in person, it's the stories that connect with an audience. It's how you connect with the heart. I've
Yeah.
always said that your stories are the gateway to your soul and the pathway to an audience's heart. And it still is the same whether you are online or in person. That is one of the ways. What do you think is another?
Well, generally speaking, staging. Now, it's done
Mhm,
differently online or on site, but if I want to have different parts of my stage for different
mhm.
parts of my story or for different points of my speech, I can do
Yeah.
that. I can do that online by
Mhm.
moving just from one part to another on my screen. Or if I've got a big
Right.
stage with a big crowd, I would do the same thing. It's just
Right.
it's a different scale online or on site.
Yeah. But I still say that there is more differences than there are the complementary pieces that come from being online versus in person. Like this, when you get to come in close and have a moment with your audience using the camera,
Right.
or you want to say that it happened back there, back then, and you can use that to make it look like you're talking about something way back there.
Mhm.
Little things like that is obviously what makes it so much nicer being here on camera. Look. The idea is, here's the thing. I'll even use my semifinal speech. Right? Didn't see it coming in 2021. To try and mimic that, and we talked about yours as well, but to try and mimic that beginning of my speech of being in the car and driving and wiping the windshield can only be done here that way. To try and mimic it on a big stage would not have that same effect as it did
Well,
here.
yeah, no kidding, Roger. It's like when I give my cake at the end of my final speech, I I do it like this.
Mhm.
In person, what would I have done? Here, I don't know what I would have done. I would have done something differently. But even when you say like you want to get close to the camera, this is something you can do online, but not in person. Actually, we do that in person, just not the same way. You don't go to someone's face and say it, unless you want to scare them. But there's still from the stage, you can still have that same effect of
Well, I
taking a
would
step
say,
forward and looking
yeah,
at one person and having that
right.
moment before looking at everybody else in the
Well,
crowd.
I would simply say that the effect in person is that you have that instantaneous gratification of them being right there, and you could see in their faces how they are reacting in that
Yep.
moment. Whereas online, moving close to the camera, and this has been told to me by many people when they've seen me speak, but they almost feel like I'm talking directly to them
Yep.
alone. And then when I come up close in this moment and speak to them, that's how they feel. Now, you pull back, so you got so now you change the camera. There
Yeah,
you
now
go.
you're
There's
good.
the camera lens. There we go. Better, right? But you know what I mean. It helps it. It helps magnify your story online when you could do this. But in person, it's that instant gratification of being able to look at someone in their eyes and say something to them and watch their reaction to it.
There was a question. I'm not sure if Kathy meant this as a question or not.
Mhm.
It doesn't look like a question, but we can still address it. It's hard to do humor with a bunch of black boxes. Yeah. So
Ah,
you've touched on it,
ah,
but not just humor, but how do you know if people are reacting or not? Now, again, season 3, episode something, we do touch on this more in detail, and it depends what is the setup. If it's online and you don't see your audience, then it's really, really difficult if it's just black boxes. But if you see faces, you can still see their reactions. And I think this is most online speaking at the moment,
mhm.
where we do see the people with their cameras on. And when I present online, I always ask people to turn on their cameras so that we can have that two-way conversation.
Mhm.
Um, so if we are able to see them, then it's easier. We can see how they're reacting. Here's a quick tip, Roger. I don't know if you do this, but if you have a line that usually is funny, that is meant to be humorous, in person, you get it immediately, the reaction. Online, you have to wait a half second or a full second before there's any reaction because of the lag time. So if
Mhm.
you're presenting something and you're expecting a laugh, wait a little bit, because if it doesn't come right now, it doesn't mean it wasn't funny. It might mean that they literally need time for the photons to make it to their computer, to their eyes, and then it goes back to you so that you see their reactions.
I just want to point out here what Lynn says. Hello, Lynn. Thanks for joining us. And she says that she prefers the Zoom meetings to the hybrid or in person. She can see and hear much better. So everybody has their own views when it comes to this. And I think there's no right or wrong answer in terms of what you feel or how you feel more comfortable when it comes to either the online or in person. But here's what I would say with that when you talk about the reaction in terms of when people smile or make a joke or anything like that. If you are online and you do happen to have everybody's pictures or their cameras on, please don't do this. Okay? If you want to glance down, here's a tip that I learned whenever I'm doing anything online. Before I get on or we start the meeting, I look for a row of people who are very energetic in the meeting before the meeting starts. And I will move them to the top row. So if I get pinned, I will move that energetic group to the top of my screen because I know that they are already laughing. You can see that they're enjoying themselves. And that's the group I will put to the top of my screen. So if I am doing anything and I'm saying a joke, I know already that they will react. And then I give a quick little glance to look up to see if they are. And if they're laughing, maybe I'll add a little more to it just so I can get an extra laugh. But I already have the energy on my screen. So there's a
Yes.
tip for anyone who is doing a presentation. Look for that group of people and then pull them up on your screen.
Mhm. Roger, we should mention that this is something that is possible. When you say move up, I've seen many people who don't know this, but
Mhm.
when you're in Zoom, as long as the host allows it, and this is most meetings in Zoom, you can
Yeah.
literally click and drag faces from one place to another. And I
Yeah.
do this when I'm listening also. If even when I'm listening to one person, I usually have the full grid view, so that a gallery view, because I'm used to it and I like to see the reactions of other people in the audience.
Mhm.
But if someone's speaking and they're at the bottom of my screen, I will click and drag them as close as possible to the camera so that when I'm looking at them, I look like a more engaged audience participant.
Right.
Here's another quick secondary tip with that. In the Zoom settings, you can go to the display or view settings options, and there's something called hide non-video participants. So if you're in a meeting with 49 participants and only half
Right.
of them have their cameras turned on, use that so that you see only the 25 people who have turned on their cameras. So the question of the black boxes all over, it's not a question anymore. Even if only 5 of them have turned on their cameras, then I see them bigger.
Right. Let me add this comment here. Hello, Susanna. How are you? Thank you for joining us as well. She simply says, you don't have to know, you just have to bring them along in your own laughter. What do you think?
Yeah, well, there is a danger here. It depends what you mean by your own laughter. If you make something a humorous line and you don't see your audience, or they're not laughing, or you don't know, and then you laugh, that was funny, right? It's almost saying, oh, I'm so funny. But if they have not laughed, then it just looks awkward. So in
Right.
your own laughter, it's possible to deliver a humorous line and just pause, smile, and hope that they have laughed. And if they've not,
Right.
move on. If they have, then good, bonus points.
Yeah.
What I've done, what I do, Roger, is I will deliver my line, and I will, if I have no idea, so the cameras are off and the microphones are off, and I have no idea, then I will just, how do I say this? Whatever follows my humorous line must match whatever audience reaction could be.
Reaction.
So whether they are smiling or laughing or just nodding their heads, it needs to match. So I might just smile and nod.
Right. Well, here's another thing. I want to, as we're obviously talking about online, but let's go back to in person real quickly. When we're in, yeah, thank you, Susanna, for correcting that, or at least letting us know what you meant.
Just pause
Here's
and
the
move
other
on.
thing. Here's the other thing, though, Alex. What about when you're in person and you try to put, we get back to being in person, and we've been online for so long, so we just automatically want to hope that they're hearing us, or they're going to laugh, or they're going to have an emotional moment on the opposite side of that camera. But now you're in person and you realize that a joke doesn't work, or you realize something doesn't happen, and you thought, hey, it worked online because I was able to express myself, in some way, and it's not the same in person, right? What do you do in that moment? Now, I know a good friend of ours, Neil Dunsmore, who told me one time that he went to an event, he was speaking, and they didn't laugh at his joke. And the one thing that he did, he said real quickly, goes, you do realize that this is funny, right? And immediately they started to giggle. And he goes, oh, so you know how to giggle. So there's ways around it so that you can get the audience back on your side. And I love that he did that, because I've tried to do that sometimes. If I've gone to a place and they're, the level, or the energy level is very low when it starts, and I make a joke and it doesn't hit, sometimes I will do the same thing. I'll mimic that style that Neil did. Shout out to Neil Dunsmore for that. And it does work. I found that it works sometimes, where they'll start to giggle and you go, oh, so you know how. And then they giggle a little more, and then you feel relaxed. They're a little bit more relaxed. You can continue on.
Yeah, this would work if you're really in the moment and you're really in touch with the audience at that moment. For someone who doesn't have a lot of experience in person, it could be a little risque. I mean, I've done the same sort of thing where I'm presenting and it doesn't land, so I'm thinking, hey, why aren't you laughing? That's supposed to be funny, and they don't laugh. It's like, oh, so it becomes even worse and more awkward. So there are different ways of doing it, and this just comes with a lot of practice with multiple different audiences, so that you can have a feel of what might work with different audiences.
Right. Yeah, not all the time will it work, but you try out new ways and different strategies to do it. I've got three P's, and we touched on two of them already, and I want to just share this with everybody. It comes from both sides. The three P's are to plan, prepare, and present. Those three. So
Yeah.
it's always planning what it is that you're going to be doing, especially when it comes to either online or in person. Prepare for that means practicing, learning how to readjust to whichever one it is. If it's online, knowing how you're going to present it online that's going to be effective. In person, how are you going to connect with the audience? And then obviously it's to go out there and present and to be confident. Be confident in yourself 100% that what you have to deliver is going to land as best as it could. And even if you have some hiccups, use it to your best advantage.
Right. And this goes as well. Like if you, I think what we've discussed a lot is taking something that is already that works so well either online or on site and going and transitioning to the other. So don't, I love those three P's: plan and prepare. Even if you've got a presentation that has been working so well in one medium, still plan and prepare. See where you'll stand on stage. See what you're going to do with every single audience interaction piece. How are you going to do it? Look at the storytelling. How are you placing the different scenes and the characters and how they're interacting with each other? How is that going to work online or on site? There's a lot of things
Right.
to think about. It's like two different speeches.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hoping that this was very helpful to our listeners today. There's so much more. Maybe we'll have to go into a part three at some point with regards to this. But these are some of the experiences and the lessons that Alex and I have learned because we've gone from the in person to the online and then back in person. And we hope that you have learned some tips today. And if you have any tips, please share it with us, or at least, if anything, share it amongst each other and help each other out in learning how to present, whether you are doing more of the online or in person. Alex, before I close off, what do you got to say?
Well, we can go from one medium to the other, online, on site. We didn't talk much about hybrid, but that's something else. That's another way of doing it. And it's like I've said, it's like a different speech. You could say it's like a different sport. If you play hockey in the winter and soccer during the summer, you can be very good at both, but there's always that period of adaptation, right? That when if you so what sometimes we do as a mistake, we 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 would play hockey and then right away go to play soccer, and then we're playing with our hands too much, or
Yep,
vice versa. So
yep,
we need
yep, yep,
that time to adapt, prepare, and make sure that we think about what needs to be done when we do make that transition.
yep. Plan, prepare, present. That's it. You have to learn all of those things in order to be able to be very effective on both online and in person. Well, we've come to the end of this episode. We thank you again, our loyal listeners, for joining us today and being a part of the conversation. And as always, we leave you with this: whether you agree or disagree, you can always find great combos. Thank you again and have yourself a wonderful week. Keep the conversations going.
Salut, have a good week. I found the background. There it is.